Welcome to Club E. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I am your architect of business growth and will work with you to amplify your scale and unlock the potential of your company. Today, we are covering bootstrapping sales is different. I want to thank our sponsors, Irish Titan, an e-commerce and web development firm, Highland Bank, a locally owned community bank, Romaine Berg, a digital marketing agency, Schwegman, Lumberg, Woosner, an intellectual property law firm, and Voyager U, which you will be learning more about today. To participate in the comments section, you must be in YouTube. And if you are there and submit questions, John Arms and I will do our best to get to your questions. So please participate there in the comments field. Similarly, you can hit the subscribe button while you're there. And if you like what you hear today, hit the like button as well. Additionally, you can listen to Club E on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and many others. All right, with that, I would like to introduce today's speaker, John Arms, and John is co-founder of Voyager U and a marketing free agent. John's contact information is in the comments field of YouTube, but if you're not viewing us there today, it's John at myjparms.com. Again, contact info is John at myjparms.com. All right, John, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your firm, and the various things that you're up to.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you for having me today. I absolutely will. So my name is John Arms. I have two firms. I'm here as JP Arms Marketing, and as Rick said, I'm a marketing free agent. And the simple thing that means is I sit in that empty CMO seat or marketing leader seat for small businesses that either are trying to do their own marketing, have somebody who's not quite seasoned at it, or just have an empty chair there. So that's part of what I do. That's this side. The other side is, as Rick said, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm founder of Voyager University, which helps people get unstuck and into their own independent career. So I have those two things going on in my life, and that's me.
So now it's not just that going on in your life. You got a lot of other things. Talk about the woodworking, and then I'm going to ask a couple of other questions, but let's start with the woodworking.
Sure. Yeah. So we all have to remain sane, right? So one passion I have, and it's actually another business, is it's called the Minnesota Mantle, and I make custom woodwork stuff for people: benches, tables, duck calls, memory boxes, all that cool stuff. And I use all recycled and reclaimed wood in those projects. So it's really fun, and it keeps me sane getting out there with the wood shop tools. So that's another dimension. And then when I'm not doing marketing free agency, helping people become independent professionals in woodwork, I can be found trying to catch walleyes, and it's a labor of love. I do my best.
And the walleye catching is northern Minnesota.
Yep, northern Minnesota, up on a cabin my dad and mom built in 1970 on the Whitefish Chain on a little lake called Lake Bertha.
Okay. And then jumping back to the woodworking, duck calls, that's kind of interesting. Tell us a little bit about that. And then also kind of the dichotomy of, you did a table for me that sits out on our deck. So it's outside, up at our lake. And then I also have seen some great pictures of some like bed frames and headboards and different things that you've done. So you cover a wide range of wood products.
Yeah, it really is a creative process. So yeah, like for your project, you had this wonderful thing that had just kind of been beat up and it was getting stuff spilled on it. And it's kind of fun to bring those things back to life. And that's really rewarding. So I do a lot of that. The bed frames I've been making, I actually go to the hardware store in my neighborhood. I get the pallets that they want to get rid of, take all the stuff off. And I thought, geez, these would make really good headboards. So that's what I did. And then I ended up putting stencils on them. So everything is different. It's all an exercise in creativity. I never know what I'm unless I get a project like, oh, can you go restore this? And even then, there's a lot of creativity to it. So it's a lot of fun. It's very, very Zen-like.
Right. And again, I have to ask, duck calls for people out there that don't really know a lot about duck calls. Fill us all in.
Yeah. So duck call, I'm a duck hunter, so that comes there. But duck calls are I make them all out of reclaimed wood too. Duck hunting is a very conservation minded exercise. And so I started making those actually to donate to conservation groups so they could sell them. And because people really treasure a handmade, one of a kind thing. And duck calls are kind of a lost art. Most of them now on the market are made out of like plastic and they're $19 and there's, Duck Dynasty stuff. But um, the ones I make are it'll take me a long time to make one. And it's, it's beautiful. It sort of harkens back to, the last 100 years of this wonderful conservation hunting sort of legacy we have in this part of the country. Boy, talking about it like that makes it seem a lot more about the experience than the call itself, doesn't it?
Absolutely. All right. So shifting gears to marketing, we might as well start with a heavy question right off the bat, hit the audience right over the head.
Right in the
What are
nose.
some of the top mistakes that you see SMBs make in marketing?
For sure, for sure. So I think the number one mistake small businesses make is what we call random acts of marketing. And that is, they hear something good about, let's say, social media, so they'll go do that, or they might get a deal on some media and they might go do that, or they might just on a Tuesday decide we're doing a bunch of direct mail right now. It's the randomness is the killer, because that it doesn't come from a place of let's do it. Let's be consistent about it. Let's measure it. It's just mostly it comes from I've got a sales or marketing problem. I'm going to reach for the closest thing and hope it solves it so I can get back to work. So that is a big one. It's directly related to number two, which is not measuring your sales and marketing. Not having a line of sight on how things are performing. Common for small business. Most small businesses, a lot of people, they don't come from marketing. They don't understand it. So it's a mystery. They're probably really good at creating their wonderful idea, but the marketing is an outside thing. So um, those are two really common ones: random acts and not measuring. All fixable and totally understandable. Totally understandable. But I see that a lot.
And then, given that you've been doing this for a number of years, kind of looking backward, how has this changed in terms of these mistakes that are made, or has it changed? And what would have been a couple of top things that maybe you would have highlighted, say, 3, 4, 5 years ago?
hmm Yeah, so I think the primary change is we can see stuff now. And by that, I mean we have a much better ability to look at action and reaction when it comes to sales and marketing. 3 to 5 years ago, some of it was there. Our ability to look at it might have been tough, whether that's looking at your Google Analytics or whether that's looking at the analytics on your LinkedIn or whatever it is. All of those things that were the sort of information was 3 to 5 years ago, it was kind of hard to get to. You almost needed an interpreter. And it gets out, "Oh, I'll go talk to the people who do that. I don't really understand it. I'm not going to pay attention to it." It really wasn't that packaged up that well for the masses. Certainly not as good as it is now. Now, our line of sight on what we're doing in sales and marketing, what's happening because of it, that has changed. Net effect on that is small businesses are able to learn so much more and so much better faster. And that is awesome.
And in talking about our session today, ahead of time, you and I and my associate Lucas traded a bunch of emails, spoke on the phone, bounced some ideas around. One of the things that you brought up was that small, mid-sized businesses are not ready for big software solutions. Maybe explain a little bit of what you mean by that and why you think that way.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So, what I mean by that is, I'm going to use my hands as an example. So, if you're a small business, you're over here, and like 4 or 5 years from now, you're much bigger, polished, you have more resources. When you're here, you're bootstrapping, as you know. And that's a mentality. That's a way to get things done without cash, without people resources. And when people are in that mental state, and all of a sudden they're faced with, I just bought a big sort of software solution for my marketing problem, or I just paid a bunch of money for a person or an agency. Not that those are bad things, but they're not ready for it. And because what often happens is most people who come out of a big company to start a small business or become involved in a small business, they probably have worked with Salesforce and things like that. Those are built for bigger enterprises. And what people tell me is, well, I use about 5% of that. The day will come when you can use it. You'll use 100% of HubSpot and all those kind of things, but not there yet. And I think the primary reason for that is you're not learning that much when you're automating, when you're using those big systems. And Bootstrap, early stage, young stage businesses, in my mind, it's all about learning from your customer and your prospect. So when I say that they're not ready for that, is the mindset and even the resources aren't quite there. Most people think they're not ready for the money to spend X amount for a software license. That may or may not be true, but they're definitely mentally not ready for the discipline and the rigor and the amount of time it's going to take for those to work when they're probably not ready to actually have those tools yet. It's like a farm team getting Michael Jordan on their basketball team. Boy, he'd be great, but we're not ready for that.
Right. Makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Talk about any other marketing dangers that you see SMBs have trouble with.
Sure. I think the number one, I'm kind of surprised by this that I run into this so often. One is actually struggling to set goals. And it doesn't seem like, be like, well, what's our sales number? What do we want to achieve? That seems like it's pretty obvious, but I would say 50% of the time, businesses they haven't articulated that perfectly. And how are you going to hire salespeople or bootstrap your marketing and that sort of thing unless you've done that work? So that is a danger, because what will end up happening is you'll end up chasing things like, well, the goal is however many sales we can get. The goal is as many customers as are available, as much money as we can make. And this is Rick, where I say get a good advisor like Rick Brimacombe and others, is you need to have somebody to help you, like, okay, let's get that pinned down, because we're going to put time and resources against getting somewhere. And if we haven't clearly defined that somewhere in numbers, it's going to be hard. We're going to struggle. And what will end up happening is, as you know, people will probably overspend in areas, others spend in others, and get distracted on their way. So, as you know, I'm a big fan of traction as a tool to get there. And I'm a big fan of getting an advisor to help you, like, let's pin that down. That is one of the number one issues. The other is, again, that random thing, is like, oh yep, I'm just going to throw some stuff at marketing and sales, but I'm not going to commit to it. So those are two. But gosh, the goals is it continues to stymie a lot of small businesses.
Because one of the things that we've worked through together is which things are worthy of our effort, which things
Yeah.
maybe back burner. Another
Mhm.
thing, you went through a pivot, and we had to kind of assess that. And so you do have to take an objective approach to making these decisions.
Mhm. You do, and you have to have a way to get to that approach. You have to have intelligence. We're moving out of an era, I think, when it comes to sales and marketing, of just pure grind and tactics. The more you spend on things that ultimately it's going to yield, and um, the more young people you lean against the problem, the more it'll solve the problem. And I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing the more thinking and wisdom, and all respect to people with gray hair, yourself and myself included, that gray hair is really highly valuable. I think we're moving out of grind your way to success and into think your way to success. Um, that's kind of that's what I'm seeing get yield now in sales and
Uh,
marketing.
so works smarter, not harder.
Yeah, yeah. And again, is it a small business's fault? No. I mean, the way sales and marketing, so many people start a small business, they're great at the thing, they're the visionary. And sales and marketing, people often think it's a personality. It is discipline and a process, and planning. It's not just something you throw at the wall to see if it sticks. And I don't fault any small business for not embracing it fully, because maybe they didn't get into it for the sales. So,
And yeah, most likely not. In fact, I see at
mhm.
Macomb Capital, most of the companies that I work with, including yours, are folks that come at things from a product perspective and the technology and solving a problem. and the go-to-market sales marketing is something that many folks don't have or don't have as much of in their skill set.
Mm-hmm.
So a reminder to everybody that, again, you can submit your questions into the comments field if you're inside of YouTube. I do have a question from Scott W. I was talking to John ahead of time. Scott and I have known each other probably for about 30 years. So welcome back, Scott. Thank you for your participation today. And Scott's question was, what's the best place to spend marketing dollars for organizations that are bootstrapping their sales process? And Scott is an emerging company, has customers, has a presence. With that said, fits nicely into this SMB marketplace. And so John, guy like yourself, would fit nicely with Scott's business and fulfilling that CMO role. If you were CMO role and you were trying to allocate resources again, where might you start with the marketing effort?
Yeah, you bet. So the first thing I would recommend is spending $24.99 on the book Traction. And I don't get paid by Traction to say that, but what that does is it gets the things that need to be pinned down so you can aim your sales and marketing in the right direction. So that's the first dollar, 25 bucks, right? That's the first thing. I think the next place you have to go is not into a tactic. I mean, I think that's probably what about like what should I do? Should I do social media? Should I do paid? Should I be doing Google and that sort of thing? Yes, later. Your next $1,000 or whatever number that you can afford is to get somebody who can help you say, we need to have discipline and understand where we're trying to go and create a plan and a process in order to get there. It's the best spend you'll ever have. It'll keep you from wasting money later. It'll also make you very honest with yourself because you'll get yourself in a situation where, okay, we are thoughtful and planful and we're bootstrapping. So the things you're going to do on the heels of that, then you can start spending dollars. But here's what I'll say. Good marketing consultants are going to come in and they're going to say, all right, let's not spend dollars first. Let's spend time. The resource we're really going to use first is time. So you look at what you're doing right now, and let's say it's disorganized. Well, a good marketing consultant is going to come and say, a good friend of mine, Erica Fair, she always said, let's get all the bunnies back in their baskets. She's a perfect fractional marketing person, and that really sort of resonates with me. Get all the bunnies back in their baskets. Everything's scattered. Let's get them all back in. And by virtue of doing that, you can start to make progress. And the first thing is in time. How is LinkedIn? Who's doing LinkedIn stuff if you're B2B? How are you measuring things? Who's the brain power on that in the company? The time is probably inside of your business. It's either CEO, COO, CFO. They probably have the intelligence of things that are happening to start with. Then you can get into what are the tactics? Do we need, what's our email thing? Do we have a subscription to MailChimp? That comes later. So the thinking, the people who do the thinking, and then the dollars.
Good plan. I like it. And then obviously, making generalizations don't always work, but some of them do. And in their defense, many SMBs can be much more nimble. They can react faster to their bigger competitors. Talk a little bit about the pros or strengths of the smaller companies. And then do you believe in the axiom that fast eats slow?
Sure. I do believe that fast eats slow for a very specific reason. And here's what I love this is why I love working with small businesses, because they can go fast. And there just isn't the bureaucracy to get things done, which is just an awesome situation to be in. In their defense and to their advantage is they can very quickly get intelligent about the sales and marketing they need to do to get leads in and turn them into sales. But they can learn so fast. And that is to their advantage. The amount of time it takes a small bank, for example, or in a huge bank just to decide on what the next 10 posts in LinkedIn are going to be is a minute versus maybe weeks. That's to your advantage. And the way in which you look at that, how fast you look when the data comes back to you. How do people react? It's 10 times faster. So to your advantage, you get to read what's happening so much quicker. You get to execute so much quicker. That being said, that being said, I'm a big, going back to my woodwork thing, I'm a big measure twice, cut once. Think about it, but you don't have to overthink these days. And Rick and I talk about this a lot, is don't ever let perfect be the enemy of good. Did I say that right? I think I did. It's more important that you get out there and market and get in front of the customer and get in a state where you can hear back from them than it is to wait 6 months to get something put together that they might not like in the first place. So the nimbleness, I think, is actually, currently I'm seeing it, it's jettisoning a lot of small businesses forward over their larger competitors because they can be nimble. They just can't be unstructured. That's all.
Sure. So as long as you're measuring, planning, got the right
Mhm.
people around,
Yep.
and then focus on the nimbleness.
Yep.
All right. So what about other prioritizations that you would try to make at the top of the heap? What do you think is the most important thing that businesses can focus on?
Cash. Small business cash. It's one of the hardest things to focus on, but things that drive cash, things that save cash, new ways to make cash. Um, and the reason I say that is, when in sales and marketing, there is a lot of emphasis put on brand and some things that are sort of in that camp that aren't wrong, but they can take a lot of time to stew in the market. Meanwhile, you can be doing cash related things in sales and marketing that's generating leads today. And most salespeople will tell you that is like, I don't need a 15th iteration of what our tagline is to go see if I can solve somebody else's problem. So that's number two, is if it's not cash, and it is cash, it's the customer. Those two things are they're going to take you way farther in your early stage or bootstrap stage than, I don't want to diminish the important brand stuff and call it like navel staring and things like that, because it often gets a bad rap. It is important, but early stage, cash and customer.
Yeah, at Piper
I've got a
Jaffray.
guest in my podcast here.
Yeah, at Piper Jaffray a million years ago, pre-gray hair, I was working in their corporate finance department, and one of the senior bankers there said, "Cash is king. It's even more important than your own mother."
It is, isn't it? I mean, and it's not so you could just hoard it. It makes things go. It's the lubricant of business.
Absolutely. And actually, you and I were just talking about your business yesterday, day before, talking about the cash the business is generating and how we can allocate that towards various activities that the business is up to.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, there's some in this whole changing the way things go now. There's some real conventions that are being challenged of what is really priority. Scott Galloway, who I'm a big fan of, he often talks about the death of brand. Like, what does brand matter if you get the lowest price on Amazon? You don't even care what the name on the package is anymore. So, and again, I'm not diminishing brand, but I think we're refocusing on what really drives a business forward. And cash and customer have a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I think statistically in surveys and such that the power of brands have diminished significantly over the last year with the lockdown and more people going online. And so I agree with you 100% on that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's changing.
So I'm sure that you hear a lot of kind of common statements about various businesses. You sit in the chair that you do, and you get all these companies and folks talking to you. One of the common things I'm sure you hear are folks that say, "Hey, all of my business is from referrals. I don't need marketing." Talk a little bit about that statement and how does that sit with you?
So how it sits with me when people say, I don't need marketing. It sits with me like, well, if you're very comfortable with if you don't want any increase in sales and you're very happy, then maybe you don't. But that doesn't last. And it's mostly because there's always there's always a timestamp on customers when they age out as a client. Nobody's forever. Nothing lasts forever. Either somebody comes in and steals them. They might get upset about your service one day, and their business might go out of business. You might be great friends, but it doesn't work. So you always have to have marketing. You always have to have a pipeline. mechanism for those days that aren't in your control but happen to you anyway. When people say the other part is all my business is referrals, I don't need marketing. Where that comes from is I don't need the fancy, I don't need to spend a lot of money. I don't need a bunch of media and things like that. The most the most important piece of marketing is referrals. And I think we have to recategorize what we say with marketing is if it's all from referrals, then what are you doing to get referrals? Tactically, are you asking for them? Tactically, do you have some sort of mechanism where you can help people give you a referral so they know what to say about you? One of the hardest things is getting someone to say what you are to somebody else. Your pitch is 90 seconds, down an escalator, all that stuff. You got like 6 words for someone to say, hey, you should talk to so and so. That's a referral. So you have to work on those things, help people refer you. And of course, the best thing is if you do awesome customer service and your product is great and there's never a hiccup, you're going to get referrals. But guess what? You're not always on, even that, if that is 100% awesome 100% of the time, people aren't always motivated to give referrals. They got their own stuff going on. They always have their own stuff going on. So you really have to think about referrals as critical component to focus and spend time and energy on. And I don't mean that to say you need to reward people and pay people for referrals. Actually do that later if it's needed. First, be referral ready. Have your 6 words, bumper sticker, as Cat Breet likes to say, get your 6 word bumper sticker nice and tight. Get that taken care of. Have some sort of reach back mechanism to people. Be referral ready. A lot of people aren't.
And then I'm guessing that you hear this one a lot as well. Folks that say, hey, I've come this far without marketing. What do you say to people who, especially to Scott's question earlier about the folks bootstrapping that maybe have spent very little on marketing? What would you say to them when they tell you, hey, I've come this far without marketing, why do I need it?
Yeah, I wouldn't argue. I'd say, listen, if your business is, if everything is the way you got it, then cut your costs and keep your inputs low. That's just proper business. As long as you're, again, like I was saying before, as long as you're shoring up your vulnerabilities. If you plan to grow, you'll have to get new customers. That's marketing. If you plan to stay in business at the level you are, you have to shore up your client relationships and your product. And those are always evolving. Nothing is ever sitting still, I guess is the point. So if you've come this far without marketing, either accept where you are, but also pay attention because everybody's vulnerable. Sometimes they just don't feel it. This year more than any, right? Like so many people had restaurant contracts and they just poof, went away. Probably some of the best relationships and the oldest relationships ever in the supply side of that, but just poof, 80% of it's gone. So marketing is a business discipline to protect you against downtimes, even if you don't need new revenue or new leads.
Reminder to everybody that you can submit questions in the comments field at YouTube. We'll do our best to get to that. John, you mentioned that some of the technology maybe was not necessary or a little bit of overkill relative to where SMBs are in their various life cycles. Other than your system and the traction book, which you mentioned, talk a little bit about some of the technology tools that matter most to the small and mid-sized business market.
Yeah. So here's my lean and mean, tech stack for the startup. Either Constant Contact or MailChimp. They're going to get you beyond your own inbox and into a more disciplined way to get out in front of a new customer base. So those are, and free versions or small versions are perfect. That is plenty for a small business. Up to we can categorize a small business in a lot of different ways, but that's plenty for your first 5, 10, 15, $20 million in sales. Is those are probably enough. If you're in B2B, LinkedIn is continues to be an ever evolving, awesome tool. I think about a third of the professional workforce is on LinkedIn. So the thing about LinkedIn is to have it and to use it are two different things. It does take some education on using it right. So it's worth it to whatever LinkedIn costs, if you get the professional thing, I think it's $500 a year, but it's worth it to spend the time on knowing how to use those tools. I think one of the failures is I have it and I kind of did it and now I'm not paying attention to it. Same thing. I got this email system, but I'm not really use those tools. Are going to give you your feedback loop that you need. That's a great starter kit. And it gets you out of the trap of random very, very quickly. And then the third is, again, our system, some sort of mechanism where you're measuring what's going on, what's happening with what I put out there, what's getting ignored, what's not. If you have a website for your business, your Google Analytics are just free and awesome way to read what's happening.
So the measuring, we have
Mhm.
been using Excel at my company. Is Excel a good tool for that, or do you recommend other things?
Excel is a great tool at that. It really is. Small businesses, that's a language every small business understands is Excel and Microsoft Word. You know, it is, since it's language we all understand and we can get it, it's a perfect tool. I think tech for the last 20 years has tried to overdo so many things. Just because you can have features doesn't mean you should or that they will get used. I do like, when it comes to tech, I do like the free version for small businesses. I do like the free version of HubSpot because it's super simple. So when people are out of leads and into sort of, they're deeper into the system where they're going to become a sale, it gives you a bite-sized, snack-sized view of your pipeline. That free version is super light lifting tech. Who has to, I mean, honest to God, when you're a small business, you're doing everything you can to grow. And you've got ops things and product things and shipping things. Who has time to spend really what it takes to get really into some deep software? And is the juice worth the squeeze on that? So yeah, the starter kit I think is really good. Constant Contact, what did I say? LinkedIn, Constant Contact for MailChimp, free version of HubSpot. That'll get most businesses 80 to 85% of the way where they need to be in their first few years.
Right, perfect. So,
and a spreadsheet, sorry, and a spreadsheet.
Absolutely. So, you and I have known one another, I don't know if it's 10 years or 15 years, but maybe even longer. We've known one another for a long time. We started working together about a year ago on Voyager U. Talk a little bit about how Voyager U has progressed over the last year based on some of the things that we've discussed today.
Yeah. Yeah, we have known each other for a while. A moment that you and I had a little over a year ago, as it relates to Voyager U, was I think it was at a Julie Keys event. We were having a lot of fun, and there's food there. This is back when we could see people, out in public. And you and I were talking, and we're like, you're like, John, tell me what's going on with this gig market thing, and what's happening there. And you and I got into a deep conversation about it. Now here we are, right, a year later. There's just so much more polish to this independent economy. You and we were a year into Voyager U. Now we're coming up on year 3. We've got 170 some members. We're new products. We got a community. We got classwork. That's what we've done to get ready for this market. Meanwhile, the market's like, oh, geez, I can work remotely. The gig thing works. I can be a top end, like C-level exec at a great company, come out of there and be my own person. Just the polish to work this way has advanced so much in the last few years. It's amazing to me, and it's energizing. And what brings me to it so much is it gives so much opportunity back to people who deserve it. Huge. I could talk about it forever, but the polish in Voyager U and the independent economy, just where it is now, today is miles beyond where it was even a year ago.
So Matt asked a question about this gig economy. Are these generally people, in your estimation, with a kind of call it a side hustle, or are these people who are making a career out of the transition to the gig economy? Obviously, there's some of both, but how do you frame up the movement with those two camps, and maybe there's other ones that I didn't mention.
Yeah, yeah. So the short answer is the latter. People are making a career out of it. And that's because it works. The market conditions are really, really good for fractional consulting, freelance, independent work. It's cheaper for the business. It's more freedom for the worker. There's no technical reason you can't anymore. We don't need to even can't be in buildings anymore. So the market conditions have made it a career. Those who started with Voyager in their first year, so a couple of years ago, the early adapters, they're full up. I mean, they've been doing this. They've got clients and side hustles, and they're independent portfolio career people. Those entering are just sort of learning that. I think what's happening is some people come into it like, gosh, I've been looking for a job. I'm stuck. It's just not happening. This economy is like the worst since the Great Depression. They're exhausted. So they start thinking, well, I'll do this in the meantime, or I'll do this to generate some cash. What happens is kind of like it. You get a little taste of freedom, you get a little cash going, you realize you're not sitting in 2-hour meetings about what kind of pop to have in the pop machine, and you're not in commutes, and you're like, work is really valued, and you get some maybe equity in some things you're doing. The way in which this world rewards you is so great. Juxtaposed to maybe what the last however many decades of work have been. It's becoming a career choice for a lot more reasons than the cash that's in it. And I'm not going to paint it to say, this is some get rich quick kind of thing. Anything that's worth doing, you have to spend time and energy and get good at. But it is a real option and a good option for the times we are in right now.
Talk a little bit, you use the word independent portfolio career.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the Voyager U universe. Talk a little bit about what that actually means, and what are some of the things that you build up from in a foundation for, again, an independent portfolio career.
Yeah. So a pie is the best way to describe it. Either a pie or a pie chart, however you want to visualize things. But it's the way of looking at your day and your career in smaller chunks. And I like to say 3 clients and a side hustle. You have a piece of pie, there's 4 pieces. 3 pieces are a client, 1 is a side hustle. They're all delivering revenue. And that is a portfolio career to somebody who's chosen to be gig, freelance, independent, and things like that. It's a really good structure to follow if you're going to go independent. If you look at that and say, well, my day when I was in corporate America, or when I worked full-time for a different company, my day had it didn't just have 4 pieces of pie. It had 75 pieces of pie, and I never got to them all. It was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then 9 p.m. to midnight. So it's a digestible way to say, okay, I'm going to chunk myself out to the market in smaller pieces, but I'm working for me now. It's my portfolio career. And a couple benefits of that. You're diversified, right? If you got 3 clients and 1 client has a bad day and goes out of business, you're not out. Like if you have a job now and that happens, you're out. You're back on the street. You're in those dynamics. So there's some diversity there. One of the things that has become interesting in the last 2 years of the 3 clients and a side hustle is the side hustle started to take on the 401k investment in the future, later growth revenue piece. I always advocate for sweeping money into an IRA or places like that. But the side hustle becomes a cash generating thing that, you're not going to get a lot of money out of it right away, but you might sell it for a whole lot of money later, or it could be a thing that turns into something much larger. It's very comforting to know that you're working on something that you kind of have control over. So when your 401k match is like, well, it's kind of at the mercy of the market. That's great. 30 years, I'll come back, there'll be more. Yeah, keep doing that. But what else can you do? What else can you do to give yourself some security later on? And a side hustle is a good example for that.
Talk a little bit about stay on this independent portfolio career, the importance of whether it's a spouse or a significant other. But if somebody is in a relationship, talk a little bit about the support they need to do this, because it can be scary. Anxiety can be high, a lot of unknowns, et cetera, et cetera. So talk a little bit about the support on the home front, and maybe ways to deal with some of the challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, so support on the home front is it's probably going to be no surprises here, but communication is very, very key. Is what are you doing? Everything from what is the business you are going to create? What is it going to look like? What is that portfolio going to look like? And communicating that to your significant other is really, really important, so that they know, even though the world has changed, you're no longer working for company X now, that there's some stability there. So that I think equally important is the emotional support. Talk about how you're feeling vulnerable. Have them talk about if they're feeling vulnerable because of this. So that good communication on the human side of things is really, really critical. Because you come into this independent world, um, most people come into it, you have to build up some confidence. You have to remind yourself that you're really, really good. Some people are going to suffer imposter syndrome. You need support for those things. And it doesn't take away your awesome that you're in this world, but it sure helps to have somebody who supports you and reminds you of that. So that's really, really critical, to have that emotional support and then that good communication on what the business structure is. There's other things that really matter. Like if you happen to have a significant other that has a healthcare plan or has some, retirement opportunities, where you can put your money into their retirement. Those things help, and sort of come into the dynamics as well.
Hmm.
So those are some at home or at apartment or at wherever you live support items.
And then what about the old axiom of, hey, if you're not marketing, you're delivering, but then when you're delivering, you're not marketing. So how do you keep that flywheel going when you're either a solopreneur or working with one or two other people, small enough organization, literally you can't do two things at the same time. How do you balance the creation of the generation of new clients also while you're delivering?
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I hope to achieve for the businesses that I serve is really never letting them suffer a dry pipeline again. Because that ups and downs, fits and starts is just, it causes a lot of stress and it's just not necessary. So the number one thing you can do is to commit to measuring what you're going to do. If you just decide, I am going to look at what we're doing, see how it's working on a spreadsheet, that alone is going to get you in a habit of, I have a pipeline going. I'm giving it care and feeding, but I'm not anxious about it and I'm not overspending my time and resources on it. It's more of a slow drip. So you get three clients, or if you're a small business, whatever it is that's driving revenue to your business. One of the worst things is you get so involved in delivery and everything related to that you forget about your pipeline. You have to have simple mechanisms that keeps that going. That's a little bit of your time and a simple foundation. A good spreadsheet, a good pipeline, and some simple tools is more than enough for a large percentage of our, what is it, 49% of our GDP is on the backs of small business. Those simple things are more than enough to keep the pipeline going. The worst thing is like, oh my God, we lost our biggest client and now we have to start from scratch. Oh my God, that'll take you down. That's not needed and it's not necessary. Rather spend an hour a week keeping the pipeline going than 60 hours in a week trying to restart it.
Talk a little bit about an SMB working with you on a fractional basis or somebody out of the Voyager U community. Talk a little bit about how the company can manage that relationship or how they can create an environment or system that allows for that relationship to be as productive as possible.
Yeah, yeah. And so for this, I'd like to speak about everybody in Voyager U because it's marketing people, it's ops people, it's IT people, it's finance people. I think the first way they can make that relationship work is know that if they're coming out of Voyager U, the number one thing they're going to bring you is intelligence and guidance and wisdom. So anchor your relationship in the big problems that you have. It might feel natural to get into, let's make this a project, or can you just do a bunch of activity against that thing because I think that's important. Our community, they're wise, man. I mean, they don't, as I like to say, they don't faint easily. They've seen people flip over tables, and we've all been there. They have so much wisdom to offer to really deal with the big issues, the core issues that might be preventing the business from growth. or missing opportunities, start your relationship with at least our population, the gray hair set, the wisdom set. Start with the big issues. Let them come in. Two is find a way to be vulnerable. Find a way to say, it's okay to say we didn't hit our numbers. It's okay to say, I don't know as a leader. Our people, the Voyager community, they love solving the thick stuff. Sometimes they're not the best ones to do the tactics. But they know who people who are. So anchor it in big picture, the big issues, the core jugular issues of the business. Anchor it there. Be vulnerable. You'll be well on your way towards having the right partner to advance your business forward. Sometimes we think it's the tactic that advances the business. More often than not, it's the thinking. It's the thinking. I guess the last thing would be, it's really healthy to forget old norms. What we're learning is the people in Voyager, they self-deploy in the market. And everybody's so used to thinking, I show up at a time, I leave at a time, and these dynamics. By the time you're over 40, 50, 60 or whatever, you're super efficient. So your value does not pack into an 8-hour day. You might solve something in 30 minutes. All that to say, look at the outcome, less the time and process. Be focused on the outcome with your fractional, less time and process. You really need to see butts and seats, or do you need to see the outcome of the effort? We know the answer is the outcome of the effort. So that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I hate that line where people say, yeah, but we've always done it that way. That drives me crazy.
Yeah, it really does. And you look at everybody, we want to look for inspiration, and inspiration does not come from people who've done things the same way. The car was built because the horse was no longer adequate, even though we've always done it this way. I mean, time and time again, the innovators they work against that. We always have done it that way. It's not a plan. It's more of a anchor around your ankle than anything else, from what I've seen in my 30 years of business and all the clients I have as a fractional CMO and what we see in Voyager. Yeah. The good thing, the Voyager group, again, like I say, they don't faint easily. They're really good at being honest. Like, yeah, okay, well, I'm looking over here and I'm seeing that way doesn't work. They're very good about being honest with businesses and say, let's get to an outcome, not so much the process.
Like it. So again, a reminder to everybody, we are talking to John Arms of Voyager U here today. If you want to submit a question into the comments field, John and I will do our best to get to it. So John, our topic today is bootstrapping sales for the small and mid-sized business marketplace. Any other thoughts? We've had a lot of questions between us here, took a couple from the audience. I wove in a few based on some of your comments, but any other thoughts that come to mind that maybe we haven't gotten to yet?
Yeah, I don't think I spent enough time on the idea of, I cannot tell you how important it is to have somebody outside your business in your business. I know that sounds weird to say. I think there's a natural state of, you're in your business, you're making it work, you're working with your people. You lose that objectivity. So I have always found that having people on the outside to talk to, either in a formal or informal way, is one of the most important things you can do to advance, whether it's a small business, whether you're a startup. If you're just a fractional CFO, get some people outside of what you do to give you some viewpoint. What comes out of that is new ideas, fresh ideas, opportunities, connections. So much comes out of that. It can be structured or it can be unstructured, so get that advisors. Now, on that, this is what I've learned from you, Rick, is have an advisor where you have some structure. So you meet a few weeks, there's some, they're paid, you get all that where you have that structure. Have people in the orbit too that are just willing to talk to you about your business. I've been so fortunate to have people who are just so nice with their time, and I can call them and say, what are you seeing here? What do you think? I'm talking to a guy named Dave Witzig later today because he's got a great funnel brain. Allie Mern, who's in our market, she's a fractional CMO. She's awesome. She's always willing to say, here's what I see. There's so many good ones that are so helpful. Get those people involved. They want to help. I don't know if great guy who lives in my neighborhood. He's a great entrepreneur in this market is Mark Lasik. Just dudes, we talk fishing every now and then, but every now and then you just get great ideas. People want to help you, and get in their orbit, help them, and then they'll help you. I don't
All
think we
right.
talk about that as much, but
And
it's
just want to
important.
make sure Mark's not on your favorite list just because he's a fisher and a hunter, is he?
Well, that's a way to get up there. That's for sure. Everybody who helps me, I'm just so blessed to have people that spend time with me and help me. That I hope I give it back. But one way I can give back is take people fishing. So,
Right. Well, you've
yeah.
been helpful to me in many different ways. I have to admit, when we first met, I did not anticipate you fixing some of my furniture from the cabin. So
It's a whole new world.
that has been a blessing. That has been a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, done a lot of interesting things in your career. As you look backward, was there something that you learned that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Yeah. Yeah. Listen to the listen to the little voices in your head sooner. If something is telling you you should explore this, because it usually the good ideas and the opportunities are things you need to avoid. I don't think they always come in as like dropped on your lap, super obvious. I think they're little voices in your head. And so pay attention to those little voices sooner. I think it'll pay off. Fortunately, a couple of years ago now that I listened to the voice in my head that was to start Voyager with Jason, my business partner in Voyager. Was I listened to that early after 30 years of not paying as much attention to that. They're there. They're telling you this is a bad hire. This is a good hire. They're telling you this is an opportunity we should pursue. Spend an hour and think about it as opposed to kick it off. Listen to those little voices in your head. There's probably opportunity there, or sometimes danger. You know, sometimes the little voices are telling you, this is not a business relationship or a personal relationship I should be in. Spend time thinking about that. I wish I did that earlier. I would have probably saved myself some gray hairs.
Well, I probably should have listened to you and wish I would have learned that earlier. Would have saved myself some gray hairs as well. So
Yeah.
I'm with you there. Hey, great talk today. We're having you back next week for a follow up. Thank you for doing that. We're definitely going to have you back in the future after that because this is a fabulous topic for our Club E community. Again, you can go to clube.com, sign up for the newsletter, watch past videos, or go to the YouTube channel Club E, Club Space E, and sign up to receive notifications when we're going live, as well as catch the entire library of, I think we're pushing probably about 400 videos now. So two different ways you can connect to the Club E community. So John, as you look at our conversation today, maybe there's something that we touched on, but we didn't touch on it enough. Maybe there's something we didn't get to, but if there was one key takeaway that you'd like our audience to remember on today's topic, that is bootstrapping sales, what would it be and why?
So this comes from Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has this great thing is at every chance you get in the habit of listening to your customer. So one takeaway, that's what I love about Bootstrap is you're in a small state. So you can be in a constant state of listening to your customer. And that always delivers your yield. I think sometimes with sales and marketing, we get a little too anxious about automating things, which can take us away from listening to our customer, which is a critical, fatal mistake in business. So listening, get into the habit of listening to your customer. Having a simple tool to look at the metrics is listening to your customer. Talking to your customers, listening to your customer. Reading the emails they send to you about your product is listening to your customer. It doesn't mean sitting down always and like, hey, can we have coffee? Listen to the tea leaves that the customer is telling you. Get in that habit. It will yield. That's the key takeaway for me.
And then, John, you offered up your time, very generous with that, with both myself and other people. And then you mentioned it here today. Somebody wanted to reach out to you to talk to you about whatever. How would they find you?
Yeah. So if you can always email me at john@myjparms.com. You can find my website, www.myjparms.com, all sorts of contact information there. You can find me on LinkedIn. Isn't it funny how LinkedIn is becoming a third email box? Those are three great ways. And I will take a phone call or an email. I'm a people person. I love listening to people's challenges and help them solve it. So I'll always listen, and I like it. So find me. Let me help you.
Right. And again, that's John at myjparms.com is his email. And if you're into fishing or hunting, he can weave you into all of that universe that he has plenty of. So, John,
Yes.
thank you very much for joining us today. Look
Thank
forward to
you.
talking to you again next week. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I hope it was helpful.
Thanks.